Now here's a game to wrest us all from our comfort zone, or maybe just mine. I've mentioned this before, but visual novels are generally not my bag. Too cheaply made and too eager to show it. And this in particular looks well beyond my depth, because I played a couple of cheap Ren'P games years ago and didn't get enough out of them to really continue. This is literally a tip from a friend, and that's how I bought this game for $8. It was meant to be $6.66. Bad exchange rates. Well, I'm wasting time. You're probably looking at this and going,
cool title, what the hell is this?
We Know the Devil is a visual novel in the purest sense. You sit, you read, you pick from a few multiple choices, and that's your lot. The premise is you take control of 3 teens at some sort of religious summer camp, and over the course of one night, the 3 of you will have to pass the time at a cabin in the middle of the woods. And no, you don't have to fend off Wendigos or anything, though that would have been really cool. But you don't do anything like that. You don't even fight the devil. Well, not really. The purpose of this camp, as dictated by the adults, is to enlist God's aid to prepare for when the devil arrives on this earth, because old Lou can arrive at any point. They have to go so far as to put up literal sirens to warn for his arrival, but facing off against Beelzebub in a game is kind of a market that's already cornered, so you can bet there's a subversive edge to it all. Are you ready for this? The devil is a metaphor for gay. The devil is a metaphor for queerness. That's it. You'll have to excuse me, I wasn't prepared for how fucking original that plot twist was. Okay, it's actually much more thickly veiled than almost any other piece of work with this trope. The game's script is dripped in metaphors and euphemisms and symbolism, so much so that even this tired plot point is mired in some secrecy. And enough is done with this concept that there's room for doubt. So many actions are described in such an esoteric fashion that they could very well be referring to out-and-out exorcism. But the heart of the concept is the only way the esoteric script pans out. In every other facet of the writing, this approach makes very little sense, and it's the big problem dragging down the entirety of We Know the Devil. The scale of events is very localized, taking place over the course of around 12 hours in one camp following 3 people. You talk with the camp leader, talk with another group while fixing up a siren, and then go to the cabin for the rest of the game. That doesn't seem like a big expanse of time for things to be very eventful, but you wouldn't know it from the way everyone talks. Almost every line of dialogue is dripping with this gratuitous grandioseness, every syllable filled with some philosophical poise, every moment of jaded cynicism, a belated battle over whether these kids want for too much or too little. Now, I want you to go back and listen to that again, and tell me, A, if the way I said that sounds at all realistic for how teenagers speak all the time, and B, if the content of what I said adequately reflects how teenagers speak all the time. And the answer to both of those is a resounding no. The monologue was invented for dialogue like this, and there is a reason most works do not base their entire lexicons around philosophical musings about their surroundings. It's because no one thinks like that 100% of the time, especially not 16-year-old girls. Neptune in particular, your 3 kids are Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune, probably a nod to Sailor Moon. Anyway, Neptune is especially egregious in overanalyzing everything and trying to rationalize every exterior reaction she observes. The way she talks is evident of someone looking back on high school in hindsight, not someone who's still there. My least favourite line is probably this one, about how kids behave around each other. Now, don't get me wrong, this does sound like something someone would say, but I was the most jaded person alive when I was in the last grade of high school, and even I did not have the wider awareness to really analyse people's behaviour like this. This is only ever an observation made in hindsight, years after the fact. Why am I being such a sourpuss about this? Simple, it makes the characters much harder to empathise with. The realism of the situation is always in doubt in We Know the Devil, and the worth of this only extends as far as to the question of the existence of the Lord of Flies. But to see these teenagers spend all their dialogue musing about the emotional logic of all their actions with each other, and the emotional logic of every exterior reaction to their own actions, makes it very clear this was written by an adult, not a kid, and it highlights the artificiality of it all. And because I experience no empathy with these characters, I have no connection to them, which makes it all the harder for We Know the Devil to convey its themes with any sort of gravity. Beyond that, the approach to the script also sometimes just makes things more confusing than they should be. Spoilers, at the end of the game, one of the 3 kids will be possessed, and then the sirens will go off and the entire camp will perform an exorcism. At least I think that's what happens. In Jupiter's ending, the metaphor shines through pretty clearly with an element of martyrdom to it all, but in Neptune's it's played so straight. She comes out of the bathroom with gunk on her, speaking of herself in the third person. It's like she's literally possessed, and at the end they kill her and drown her body. It's not just that the presentation is so overt in this moment, but also because it's difficult to tell what sparks one kid's transformation over the others. Okay, get this. The multiple choices you face each time determine which two characters will stick close to each other while the third is left out, and apparently the kid left alone the most will become the devil at the end of the game. I say apparently because you'd either need to go to the store page to find this out or figure it out through good old gamer ingenuity. Not only is there no indication of this being the explicit catalyst in the dialogue, it's just very difficult to discern this because once again, the transformation is more obvious on some playthroughs than others. Of course, anyone could tell you that there is a true ending involving all the kids, but there's not one where the devil isn't involved. Rather, the true ending is one where they all awaken the beast within and Venus cuts off her arm? Once again, the dialogue is being driven entirely by obtuse metaphors, so for all I know, she did cut off her arm and she's just nonchalantly gloating about it. I just got done playing another game where someone cuts off their arm. They weren't nonchalant about it. And then the three of them realise they're alone together in this lonely world, getting a cuddle and wait for the rest of the scouts to come and seize them. But in the morning it seems like they win the kids over and they put up quote unquote new sirens. And is the implication meant to be that through the strength of these three they somehow conquered homophobia forever? Look, I don't even know what I'm talking about. There's an obvious queer bent to it, and that's fine, but as someone who has quite a bit of experience with every spectrum of the field, let's say, I don't understand any of the feelings being conveyed. Am I being unfair? Am I being belittling? Because I feel like a really old man who just doesn't get it. But if you think I'm fat out of touch, well, get a load of this. If you don't know what you're looking at, this achievement is a reference to All the Things She Said by Tattoo, a pop song from the very early 2000s about forbidden lesbian romance. The problem with referencing that today is that we have reason to believe Tattoo's act was a put-on for the sake of marketing. I mean, we don't know for sure, but we do know that one of the singers considers gay men to be not real men. So, not the first option for a lesbian icon reference. Was Bound too left of the dial or something? Considering how straightforward and arguably lightweight the setup of the game is, I don't feel like the distance between me and the game should be this enforced. Obviously, at its heart, we know the devil is a gay parable, and yes, there are a lot of those, but in trying to make it unique, whoever wrote this was just going way overboard in making these characters their author avatars. Who did write this? The light begins to dawn. Okay, I'm gonna have to slow way down for this one. 3 years ago, I bought this book called Ghosts in the Machine, a short story anthology with little vignettes penned by various video game critics and analysts. I don't know where my copy is, which should tell you what I think about it overall. The last story in the bunch was penned by one AVB. I don't really remember it. It was something about sentient fighting game characters being ranked and picked on image, but again, it was very hard to connect with and came from a place so personal to the author it was borderline indulgent. And I've read a few more of her articles. We even traded words on a preemptive reaction she had to GTA 5 once. It would be unfair of me to call her a bad writer with no hint of irony considering some of the garbage I've produced, but let's just say that when I went through all of We Know the Devil, finding it impossible to connect with, and saw that name in the credits, it all made sense. Well, it made sense and how it didn't make sense. That's not the only name in the credits that took me off guard. Featured in the special thanks is... Of course you'd reference the second fucking worst character in the game. Gee, now I know where your lack of pragmatism comes from. And here I was thinking I could make a review without referencing Danganronpa, only for it to turn out I didn't have a choice this time. And that'll about do it for We Know the Devil. Anything good? Well, I liked the art style, simple as it was, expressive, dynamic enough, and I liked the choice to basically give all the other characters beady eyes to demonstrate they have basically nothing in common with our heroines. There is actually one part of the game I really enjoyed. you've been listening to it the entire time. No, for real, the music is awesome. It's this uniquely abrasive techno ambience. Composer Alec Lambert says it's based on 80s horror movies like John Carpenter's The Thing, but I hear more than that. Like, I imagine this is what Godspeed You Black Emperor sounds like. I say imagine because I have never listened to Godspeed You Black Emperor. I mean, I'm seeing Between the Buried and Me live in a couple of days. I am not the audience for Godspeed. Just like how I'm not the audience for this. My original closing quote was going to be, I don't get it. But I think I can be a bit more salient than that. This sure ain't no analog of hate story, and for the one person actually interested in my thoughts in this game, I apologise. Well, that was a fun experiment. I'm gonna go back to marathoning Dead Space or something. The story of Turok is, you go places and shoot things. Sure, why not have two characters named Kaz in the same game? I'm sure they'll be as annoying as each other too. I would make some comments on how groan-worthy it is that a freshman uni setting is relying on so many tropes, but no, this is basically how my first year in journalism classes went, and considering the arguable home turf of the fanbase, I knew I'd have to hit it sooner or later.